Help Ukraine protect peace.
Help Ukraine protect peace.
Stop Russia, stop the war.
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 Russia is a terrorist state.
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 We have to remember the past, my friends, but we cannot try to return to that past. We need to remember the people who did great deeds in the past. One of them is Danilo Skoropadsky, who was mentioned to me and reminded to me by a fine gentleman who's here in our rally. Him and his wife went to his grave and cleaned it from all the leaves that were on top of it. We need to remember the people who have helped us in the past. We need to remember them and to use the memory of those people as inspiration for better acts in the future, so that we will make the world better and not worse. Better than it was, better than what it is. However, some people refuse that future. Some people want to bring back the past. And perhaps the person who wants to bring back the past the most is Putin. He has mentioned many times that the collapse of the Soviet Union was the greatest catastrophe of the 20th century. An absolutely ridiculous claim. It's almost the same. In fact, it is the same. That if a German chancellor would say that the collapse of Nazi Germany was a tragedy. Of course, they will not say that, because it's not true, and because it's absolutely insane. They would lose their power immediately. But when it's Russia that does it, for some reason, we simply suspend our disbelief and allow them to say what they want. We allow them to run their mouths as much as they want, without opposing them. And that is the real danger of this situation, my friends. Because even if somebody is spreading idiotic ideas that everybody knows are fake and false and stupid, they will get some traction if there is no opposition against them. That is, my friends, what we stand here for. To oppose such misguided ideals. To oppose the Russophiles and the apologists who claim that the way to the future is via submission to our overlords in the Kremlin and from wherever else they might want to come from. The so-called interview of Tucker Carlson shows a lot of these things very clear as day. Instead of asking legitimate questions to Putin, for example, if he's afraid of being persecuted for the war crimes that he's committed, he was asking loaded questions, easy questions, questions that Putin would love. Instead of asking Putin questions that would make him uncomfortable, questions that everybody is curious about, he instead asked him questions of why is he not even more extreme than he is now? Why didn't he take over Ukraine long ago? Why wait so long? Those were the kinds of questions that Tucker Carlson was asking. He was itching Putin even more. Why are you such a nice guy? Why did you not exterminate all of the Ukrainians before? That is the kind of demeanor that Tucker Carlson showed in his so-called interview. And all the individuals who claim that poor, innocent, prosecuted Putin could not get a word in because the evil West was not allowing him to speak. All of these people are fools. Putin has the resources of a whole country at his disposal. When he wants to speak, he can speak, and nobody can stop him. And that is why people need to understand this simple fact, that simply speaking to someone does not reveal any new information. You see, we knew what Putin stood for before, way before this so-called interview with Tucker Carlson. We knew it all along because Putin has said so himself. in these hour-long James Bond villain speeches that he's made in the past so many times, again and again and again, we hear the same exact nonsense. That Ukraine never existed. That Ukraine was invented by Stalin. And yet at the same time, Putin changes his own ideas throughout his speech. Sometimes he says Ukraine was made by Stalin. Sometimes he says Ukraine was made by Poland. Sometimes he says Ukraine was made by the Mongols. So what should we actually believe in, my friends? The answer is very simple. We cannot believe in Putin. We cannot believe in the wolf that bangs on the door and asks you to come in because he's such a nice guy. Not that the wolf would do that, obviously. But you know what I mean, my friends. In this case, Russia is reminiscent of a hungry wolf. And all of these isolationists are nothing more but the people who prefer to stay in their own home instead of banding together and killing this wolf once and for all. Unity makes strength. Division makes weakness. It's as simple as that, my friends. And to move to a better future, we need to unite at last. And we need to provide Ukraine with what Ukraine needs to finally bring this war to an end. Not for a day or a week or a month, but forever. That is our way future towards that better future. Arm Ukraine, protect peace.
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 Fighter jets for Ukraine.
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 Air defense 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 for Ukraine.
My friends, I would like to thank every single one of you for coming here today. What we're doing is unbelievably important. Because a cause that people continue to spread, a cause that people continue to stand for, a cause that people continue to fight for, will never die. And it will inevitably, eventually win. We need to show the Russian terrorist regime that they cannot simply endure a year or two of war and then things will go back to what they used to be, with the world not knowing and not caring about whatever happens in Ukraine. We need to make sure that the Russian terrorist regime sees the futility of their actions and that there is no victory for them, Pyrrhic or heroic, so there be. Although, how could we call any kind of victory for the Russian terrorist regime heroic? Of course, they would call their heroism when they retreat, when they run away, when they show these goodwill gestures. Thank you very much. When they're defeated on the battlefield by the Ukrainian army. And it will happen again many times until they're defeated for good. But for that, we need to remind the world that the war is now over, that the battle continues, the war continues. And the only one way to stop this war, to end this war, is to help Ukraine win at last. And we have support all over the world, because the world is finally waking up to the necessity of standing against authoritarianism, the necessity of standing against genocide, the necessity of standing against Russia. And that is what we stand here against, my friends. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
Ворогам України тричі!
Смерть! Смерть! Смерть!
And now, my friends, we will have a short musical break.
Слава Україні! Слава Україні! Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Захисникам та захисницям України тричі! Слава! 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 Hello, my dear friends. I am so happy to see so many of you here on a Sunday when we could have done other things, but we are here because we know why this is so important. There are many things I want to talk about today, and none of them are going to be pretty, unfortunately. I'm going to start with the thing that perhaps touched me the most over the past few days, over the past weeks, and that is one of the numerous attacks that Russia has committed against Ukraine. This time I'm going to be talking about the artillery strikes on Kharkiv that have happened yesterday, and the recovery of the bodies of which has finished today. The first news article, the first memo that I've seen about that event was that it is impossible to identify a newborn child because the body has been burned to a crisp, and hence it is only possible to determine who that child was based on the apartment where he was found. They said that the remains of the mother have been found nearby. Accounts and the current investigation says that it is most likely that the mother was trying to hold her kids in her arms in the bathroom where they were trying to hide from the artillery strikes when they understood that the building is already on fire and they are not able to leave. In that attack, there were no survivors of that family. It was 5 people, the mother, her husband who was disabled, and their 3 kids, the youngest of which was no more than a year old. It is hard to talk about these things because they happen way too often. And it scares me how we normalize the fact that these attacks happen and that these people die. This has come to my attention just because I follow the relevant Telegram channels, because I follow the relevant news where I see the scale of the deaths of the civilian population. But I know that the majority of the people who watch the news and are following the situation in Ukraine somewhat just know of this as yet another attack. I think about all of the deaths and all of the people who we will not be able to identify, who have not been found under the ruins of collapsed buildings, and those whose lives have been cut too short by the Russian invasions. I want to remind you that over the almost two years of the invasion, We have found multiple clues to what Russia has been doing in Ukraine. Those include mass graves, those include recordings of Russian soldiers taking people out to a wall and shooting them dead, executing them. We know that there's a lot of people who have not been identified, and they would not be ever identified because their bodies were not found. Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia